Hi everyone. This semester I'm going to use a tool called GitHub Classroom to manage some of our assignments. The idea is that I will take starter code and other files you need and put them in a Git repository and then give you a link that you can use to clone that repository so you have your own copy of those assignments. You'll do work in that repository and then submit your work by doing a commit and push. So let me walk through the first GitHub Classroom assignment we'll be doing, and that is the first week's lab. So here I am on the course webpage, and I'll scroll down to where the links to the labs are. Here is week 1's. And what you'll be looking for is a link talking about starter code or GitHub Classroom or something like that. And so when you follow the link, the first thing it will do is it will ask you to sign into GitHub. Or if you're already signed into GitHub, you may not get this screen. But here I'll sign in and then you'll get redirected. And what it's going to do is it's going to clone that repository with the starter code in it. Now this is different from forking if you've done forking with GitHub before. When you fork a repository, you're working on a piece of it, but they're all tied together. What we're going to do with Classroom is you're going to get your own complete separate copy, and that keeps your code separate from the other students' code. Makes it easier for me to look at individual assignments and grade assignments and whatnot. So when that copy is done, you'll get a link to your newly created repository. And then here with the green button where it says code is the magic string you use to clone that repository. Now at this point there are several different ways to get started. You could clone it from the command line, but I'm going to clone it right from an IDE since that's what I've seen most students do recently. I've been using Visual Studio Code because it was introduced to me by a friend while I was working at Spectrum Health, and I found it a lot easier to work with than IntelliJ, although there are still a lot of things about IntelliJ I do like. So here I've launched Visual Studio Code, and I can hit Command-Shift-P, and I can go to Git Clone, and then I will put that magic string in to the Git Clone. And so what it'll do is say, well, where do you want to put this project? I'll put it in my code directory, and it will clone that repository. And in Visual Studio Code, everything should be set up. So what you'll see is a source directory with main in it. That's where your code is going to go. I've prepared a shell for you. All you have to do is come into that convert method and add your code. And I also created some sample tests. I'm using JUnit 5 here. It has some nice features that JUnit 4 doesn't have, like you can write one test and run multiple test cases. So you'll just be adding tests to this, add your code to here, and then when you want to test it, you can just click on Run Test, and it gives you a nice idea of whether your tests pass or fail. Of course, the first time you run it, your tests are going to fail because there isn't any code there. Okay, so let's say you've done some work. I will, just for the sake of having something to do, I will come in here and change the return value to something else. And so when you're ready to submit work, then you just have to do a commit and push. So git add, git commit, and we'll do a git push, and that sends it back up to GitHub where I can then take a look at it. The other thing that's going to happen is it's going to run the automated tests. So I put some automated tests in this project. And so after you do a push, then you come back to your GitHub page and it says actions here. You click on actions and you can see that it's running those automated tests. So then you can see that it failed. And so when it fails, that means your own tests aren't catching some bugs, so you need to figure out what's missing in your own test, fix stuff up, and recommit, repush. Okay, I suspect a number of you are probably a little more familiar with IntelliJ than Visual Studio Code, so I'm also going to walk through setting up this project in IntelliJ inside of our EOS and Arch environment. So like before, from the GitHub page, I will grab that SSH URL, and then I'll launch IntelliJ. Okay, and so we'll grab this starter code right from version control, paste that URL in. This is a Maven project. Okay, and now we can see the source with the main project, the converter that you're going to fill in. Your code will go right here, and the test that I've set you up with. So I just click on the test button, select run the test, and you can see that the test ran here. And of course, they all failed because there's no code to pass. But if I come over here and at least do a small bit of work, I'll just have it always return 0. And then I can rerun those tests. And at least one of them passes, the one that expects a 0 answer. So at least in the EOS and Arch environment, this should be all set up. It should be ready to go with little to no configuration on your part, unless, of course, you have some configurations in your existing accounts that may conflict. If you're working on your own machine, of course, there are other things that could go wrong, and I may or may not be able to help with that. So hopefully that puts you in a good place to get started, and finishing up this lab won't be too much work.